Welcome to the Nurse's Corner. Today, I will be... Nurse's Corner. Of starting in COVID. All of the information to help you stay healthy. Sizer. No. I'm just gonna take that out. Why do I still have that written in here? Welcome to the Nurse's Corner. Today, we will be discussing what our protocol is if a student or a staff member presents with COVID or COVID-like symptoms. I realize that this is a very difficult topic, so let me assure you that at Sizer, all of our cleaning, our health protocols, our monitoring are being done with the most research-based information that we possibly can. These policies have changed in development multiple times as more information has come up. In this presentation, I will be discussing both the Sizer policies as well as policies that are coming to us from the Department of Public Health. As Sizer is partnering with the Department of Public Health and the Board of Health from Fitchburg to make sure that we can give our students the most comprehensive care possible. So some of the things that I will be discussing are our policies. Some of the things that will be discussing are the DPH policies, and I'll try to make those differentiations very clear. So the first thing that we are asking you to do, and the most important thing, is monitoring your health. At Sizer, we promote Think, Care, Act, and part of that is self-monitoring and self-advocation. And the most important part of us being able to stay healthy and safe at Sizer is to make sure that the people coming into our building are as healthy and as safe as possible. So we have separated the symptoms that would preclude you to not coming into school into two categories. On the left are the major symptoms. If you have one of them, you're done, don't come into school. On the right-hand side are the two symptoms. If you have two of them, 2 strikes, you're out. As you can see, the one or the major symptoms are the fever, cough, shortness of breath, sore throat, loss of taste and smell. The two are headaches and body aches, or runny nose, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or fatigue. I realize that a lot of these symptoms are things that we may live with normally because of a cold or allergies or flu. But we're asking you to take the most caution possible when deciding if you're going to come into school for the day. So let's say you wake up and you have a headache and a runny nose. Don't come into school. At that point, you are going to stay home from school and you're going to email or call Nurse Dugas. And I will work on you. We will work together for what the next step in care is. So this is the most important thing. This image right here will be sent home to those students who will be joining us for hybrid as magnets. So it's sitting there right in your kitchen, right on your fridge, so that it's right there so you don't have to memorize it. So if you are sick at home, you are to stay at home. Call your pediatrician or your child's pediatrician to get your student tested. And the whole family unit, so whoever's living in the house, should quarantine until test results come back. Quarantine is different than isolation. Quarantine basically means that the door to come in and out becomes a wall. The family stays inside, everybody else stays outside, but the family, when they're inside, they can still interact with each other. Isolation is separating the family unit from the person who is positive of COVID. So what I'm asking you to do is to quarantine. You can still interact with your family members within your house, but nobody comes into the house and nobody goes out of the house until you get those test results back. And if a student is sick at home or sick at school, let's say maybe they had one of those two symptoms and the second one is now presenting itself. I will assess every student that has any kind of a health complaint. If I deem them to be COVID or COVID-related symptoms, they will go into the nurse's annex, which is right next to my office. If they are not COVID-related symptoms, I will treat with them as normal, and then they will be monitored. Please understand that if a student goes into the nurse's annex, that does not mean that they automatically have COVID. That just means that some of the symptoms that they're having could be COVID. So we're going to treat them as positive until we know otherwise, just for their health and the health of our community. When they are in the annex, the guardians will be called. It is imperative that you come as quickly as possible to pick up your student. We're hoping for under 30 minutes. That's one, to get them to testing as soon as possible. It's also to keep that space as limitedly used as possible so that we don't have students getting sick from being in there. When a guardian arrives to pick up the student, I will give them a packet of information that will have everything that I'm going through in this presentation on it. It'll have some self-care tips and some tips to self-quarantining the family. So the follow-up. When the student leaves the nurse's annex and leaves the school, call their pediatrician and have them tested. Currently, we are not accepting rapid tests. We are accepting only what you'll hear referred to as the PCR or the long-term test. This is because the rapid tests have been showing really high numbers of false positives and false negatives, meaning that their accuracy is really off. So call the pediatrician. If the pediatrician deems it, have the student go and get tested. If the student gets tested, have the whole family quarantine until those results come back. If those results come back negative, if they come back negative, the student can return to school when the symptoms have resolved. If they come back positive, they are to isolate for 10 days and the family is to quarantine. And this procedure, this is a DPH procedure. This is my way of giving you as much information as possible in worst case scenario if your family has to go through this. The other thing is to follow the instructions of the Board of Health. A Board of Health nurse will be calling you to follow up with you and your family throughout this entire process. Please be a part of that process. And a family and myself, should that family have to go to be tested, I will be in constant communication with you as well, acting as the liaison between you and Sizer while you are out. So the other thing that we've heard a lot about are close contacts. Close contacts are anybody who is under 6 feet of distance for 15 minutes in the span of 24 hours. Meaning that if you were with somebody for 10 minutes for breakfast and 10 minutes for lunch, you're a close contact should that person become positive. A separate email will be sent out with instructions should your child or your student be determined to be a close contact. And those students must quarantine for 14 days regardless of the test results. And it is only them that need to quarantine in comparison to when there's a positive in the family and the whole family needs to quarantine. Travel. So travel is highly discouraged this year. It is imperative that you travel only when absolutely necessary. If your student or family travels outside of the safe states per DPH, they must quarantine for 14 days upon return. And again, this is a DPH requirement. This is a DPH requirement that Sizer has adopted into its policy. So 14 days quarantine when you return to Massachusetts. If you're traveling within the safe states, you may return as normal. Those safe states can be found on the Massachusetts travel website. Right now, they include a few states on the West Coast and most of New England. So what about learning while you're quarantined? 2 weeks is a long time to not be engaged in learning. And that's why we're trying to minimize the amount of time that a student isn't engaged in learning. So if you have to quarantine, myself and the administrative team at Sizer will ensure that your student can access remote learning as much as possible, so that there's no time missed. And if you have any questions or concerns or comments, please feel free to reach out to me. My phone number is on this slide. My email was on the slides previous. Please feel free to connect with me if you have any questions. I'm here as a resource for you to be able to navigate these really confusing times. Again, these are worst case scenario if somebody presents with COVID symptoms. This is a blend of Sizer's policies and the DPH requirements to be able to give you the most information possible. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week in the Nurse's Corner.